Disclaimer, I am a regular person. Oh, if overthinking were a building, it would be a stadium, not a small stadium either. I'm talking about one of those massive structures with several entrances, overpriced parking, confusing hallways, and at least three people arguing over seats that do not belong to them. Because overthinking comes in many forms. Sometimes overthinking is anxiety searching for certainty. Sometimes it is fear rehearsing disasters that have not happened. Sometimes it is the mind attempting to solve a problem that does not currently have enough information to be solved. But sometimes what people call overthinking is not overthinking at all. Sometimes it is pattern recognition, awareness. It is a person noticing red paint on a snow white wall while everyone else insisting the wall is still clean. And that distinction matters because there is a difference between inventing a danger and identifying a pattern. There is a difference between worrying without evidence and noticing that someone's words, behaviors, excuses, and outcomes keep lining up in the same suspicious formation. There is a difference between anxiety saying something bad could happen and experience saying this exact thing has already happened 6 times. People who develop strong pattern recognition skills through difficult life experiences may notice changes in tone, contradictions, emotional shifts, incomplete stories, and repeated behavior much faster than people around them. That awareness may have begun as a survival strategy. A child who grows up around unpredictable adults may learn to study facial expressions, footsteps, silence, breathing patterns, or changes in the atmosphere of a room. Word to me. That child may become an adult who can detect tension before anyone says a word. The skill may have had sad beginnings, but the skill itself is not automatically a weakness. The challenge is learning how to use it without allowing it to use you. Because pattern recognition can become wisdom, but without balance, it can also become hypervigilance. And hypervigilance can make every shadow look like a suspect wearing a trench coat. So, this conversation is not about blindly trusting every feeling. A feeling is information, but it's not always a final verdict. Intuition may be an alarm, but an alarm still has to be investigated. Pattern recognition is powerful, but it must be paired with evidence, patience, emotional regulation, and action. Otherwise, observation can slowly turn into rumination, and thinking without action is rumination. The only nation we recognize around here is Rhythm Nation. The label of overthinker. I have read about and studied philosophy, psychology, human behavior, my own psychology, and the connections between past experiences and present choices. And one thing I have repeatedly noticed is that people often use the word overthinking as a shortcut. Sometimes they use it because they genuinely believe a person is worrying too much, but other times they use it because the person has noticed something they do not want examined. When you are dealing with someone who is in denial about their own behavior, your observations may threaten the character they have built in their head. They are not merely protecting an action, they are protecting a persona. They may see themselves as honest even when they regularly bend the truth. They may see themselves as dependable even when every deadline arrives before they do. They may see themselves as peaceful, even though peace apparently leaves the room every time they enter it. And when you point out the contradiction, they may not examine themselves, they may examine you. Suddenly, you are too sensitive, too negative, holding on to the past, making something out of nothing. You are overthinking. But what if the past is not actually in the past? What if the past keeps putting on a new outfit and returning every Tuesday? What if the problem is not that you remember what happened? What if the problem is that the behavior never stopped? When someone repeatedly lies, changes details, bends the truth, skips accountability, or attempts deception, the person noticing the inconsistencies may receive the label of overthinker. It's not that deep. You're reading too much into it. That happened a long time ago. Meanwhile, the same behavior is still sitting at the kitchen table eating leftovers. The danger is not simply the label. The danger is what happens when you accept the label without examining the evidence. You may begin doubting your memory. You may question your emotional reactions. You may ignore contradictions that deserve attention. You may keep extending trust to someone who has shown you that they only should be trusted with the plastic spoon. Stop dating potential. Well, I mean, I guess that was that one, and this one was this one. When people care about someone, they often confuse patience with responsibility. They believe enough love, grace, understanding, loyalty, prayer, encouragement, or emotional labor will eventually produce growth. But humans are not houseplants. Daily light and water do not guarantee emotional maturity. Growth must be initiated by the person who needs to grow. Outside influence can inspire change, consequences can encourage change, support can make change easier, but another person cannot perform someone else's internal transformation. You cannot exercise for another person and expect their muscles to grow. You cannot attend therapy for them. You cannot apologize for them. You cannot become accountable enough for two adults. At some point, you have to evaluate people as they currently are. Word to the lemon law. Do not build a close relationship around a future version of someone who has not arrived. They are not an auction vehicle that only needs new tires, a paint job, and a motivational speech before it can be sold at a buy here, pay here lot. They're not a foreclosed house, and you're not a do it yourself home flipper hoping to renovate your way into generational wealth. You are dealing with a complete human being who has habits, beliefs, coping mechanisms, wounds, defenses, and choices. Ask yourself a difficult question. Can I peacefully deal with this person exactly as they are today? Not after therapy, not after they finally understand, not after they lose something important, not after you teach them how to communicate, not after the next breakup, breakdown, spiritual awakening, tax refund, or New Year's resolution. Today. Because personality patterns can sometimes resemble climate. If you move to the desert, hoping it will rain every afternoon, your hope will not make the scorching days cooler. A rare thunderstorm does not change the climate, it only gives you one wet Tuesday. Many people become trapped because they use exceptional moments to excuse consistent behavior. They hold on to one beautiful weekend while ignoring 6 months of confusion. They remember one sincere apology while overlooking the fact that nothing changed afterward. They chase the thunderstorm while living in the sandstorm. That is not optimism. That is emotional gambling. And be sure that it didn't develop in childhood too, because a lot of times, as stated in previous videos always help, because some things I mentioned one time and I haven't mentioned since because I don't like being redundant. So if you haven't really caught up on the episode, you're going to be behind on a lot of my rhetoric and references and things like that. The restaurant that never changes. Imagine a restaurant with rude staff, low quality food, dirty tables, and a special talent for getting every order wrong. You stop going for 2 weeks. Then you return hoping the restaurant used your absence for reflection, therapy, staff development, and a complete spiritual rebirth. But the fries are still cold, the staff is still rude, your order is still wrong, and somehow they are blaming you for ordering food. That is what happens when people assume time automatically creates change. Time creates opportunity, it does not create accountability. Space may give someone room to reflect, but reflection is not guaranteed. Some people use space to grow, others use it to rewrite the story. By the time they return, they are no longer the person who harmed you. According to their new script, they are the victim of your reaction to what they did. Now the entire conversation is about your tone instead of their actions. They can take your car, crash it through a living room, reverse over the mailbox, and leave it in another state. But when you confront them, the discussion becomes, I didn't like the way you said my name. And suddenly your tone has its own courtroom drama, spin-off series, documentary, and primetime television slot. Meanwhile, their original behavior has quietly escaped through the back door. This is narrative flipping. Whether it is conscious or unconscious, the result is the same. The person avoids accountability by moving attention from what they did to how you reacted. That does not mean every emotional reaction is automatically healthy. We are still responsible for our own words and conduct, but a reaction should not be used to erase the action that caused it. That's so annoying when people do that, especially if it's somebody that you really thought that if y'all can get through whatever the disagreement is, that it will make you closer to them, and they just refuse. So you have either two choices: to separate and let it be what it's going to be, or lower your standards and put up with that, which usually when once you do that, they start adding more to the plate and it becomes too heavy to carry. Two things can be discussed. Your tone may need work, their behavior may still be unacceptable. Accountability is not a game of musical chairs where only one person is allowed to sit down. And if you're able to see that other people don't have accountability, make sure you're holding yourself accountable for things in your own life. Because when you start with your own life, it naturally becomes a thing that you do for other people. But if you're not even holding yourself accountable to the state of your life, if you're able to blame a lot of people for stuff, it's a high likelihood that you may have a blind spot when it comes to accountability, especially if you are able to frame an outside enemy as the source of whatever pain you experience internally that may be due to your actions or inactions. Familiar chaos. Hyper aware people can become especially vulnerable to these cycles because uncertainty may feel familiar. Gaslighting may feel familiar. Emotional inconsistency may feel familiar. Trying to earn safety from an unpredictable person may feel familiar. And familiarity is often mistaken for connection. The nervous system does not always choose what is healthy. Sometimes it chooses what it recognizes. A person may say they want peace while repeatedly becoming attached to chaos because chaos speaks the same emotional language of their childhood. They know how to perform inside uncertainty. They know how to monitor a room, how to adjust themselves to keep another person calm, how to apologize before they even figure out what happened, how to become a non-confrontational floor mat with excellent customer service. This is how someone may slowly train you to go above and beyond to keep the peace. You begin chasing the good moments and fearing the bad ones. You become focused on restoring the relationship to the version that appears during the good periods. You do not realize that the inconsistency itself has become the relationship. The moments provide hope. The bad moments create fear. Hope keeps you invested. Fear keeps you compliant. And the cycle increases your suffering while reducing the pressure on the other person to change. Because why would they change if you keep absorbing the consequences? Grace without boundary can become permission. Understanding without accountability can become self-abandonment. Forgiveness without observation can become a subscription service to the same problem. Upbringing and denial and bent reality. Every person is shaped by an environment. Some people were raised around honesty, repair, emotional expression, and accountability. Others were raised in environments where adults lied, avoided responsibility, protected appearances, and attacked anyone who acknowledged the truth. Word to the hyenas. A person raised in an unstable environment may carry some of those patterns into adulthood. They may have learned that admitting fault is dangerous. They may have learned that protecting the family image is more important than protecting individual people. They may have learned that silence is loyalty, that questioning authority is betrayal, that reality belongs to whoever speaks with the most confidence, even though the emptiest wagons make the most noise. This does not make them permanently broken, but it does mean that change requires conscious effort. They may become so committed to a bent version of reality that your acknowledgement of actual events that really happened, that you were there for, you probably even have receipts for, sends them into defense mode. At that point, the disagreement is not about a single incident. You are challenging the emotional structure that keeps their identity standing. That is why some conversations feel impossible. You bring evidence, they bring identity protection. You bring dates, they bring outrage. You bring a screenshot, they bring three cousins, a church member, an old classmate, and someone from Facebook who has never met you. There is no winning when the goal of the conversation is not truth. If the goal is protecting the persona, facts become enemies. And online usage is making this worse in people because people are finding echo chambers where these types of behaviors are normalized. And it's kind of like a roach finding a roach nest, and they breeding and they making hybrid roaches. Word to the ones that fly. You ever seen a flying roach before? Pattern recognition as a gift, but not a prophecy. Pattern recognition is valuable. Businesses spend enormous billions of money studying consumer behavior risk, trends, habits, markets, and future possibilities. And remember, the dollar sign goes before the digits. They collect information because patterns help them make decisions. A skilled pattern recognizer may notice connections quickly. They may detect recurring excuses. They may notice when someone's actions regularly contradict their words. They may sense changes in environment before the cause becomes obvious. They may see that a professional always produces a dramatic story whenever a deadline is missed. They may notice that a friend only becomes supportive when the spotlight is not on them. They may recognize that every apology is followed by the same behavior. It's worse when you're dealing with professionals and you really hoping that they get it together and finish whatever y'all agree upon. And yeah, it's a headache. It's sad. But that's why it's good that you can report people. They may recognize that this is information, but here is where discipline matters. A pattern is not always proof of motive as much as it feels like it, especially if you're in fight or flight mode or around people you don't know. A facial expression is not a conviction. A strange feeling is not a complete investigation. Being observant does not make a person infallible. Sometimes we correctly identify the pattern, but incorrectly explain its cause. Someone may be distant because they're dishonest. They may also be distant because they're overwhelmed, embarrassed, distracted, grieving, or dealing with something unrelated to us. The responsible pattern recognizer leaves room for verification. They observe, they compare, they ask questions when appropriate, they document facts, they watch what happens over time. They do not turn every suspicion into a public trial. Pattern recognition should help you make better decisions, not convince you that every thought is sacred. The goal is not paranoia, the goal is discernment. Discernment says, I noticed something, so I will pay attention. Paranoia says, I noticed something, so I already know the entire story. Wisdom knows the difference. Oh, that was that one. Oops. Groupthink. When groupthink meets the pattern recognizer, pattern recognizers may feel especially uncomfortable in environments where everyone is expected to think alike. Homogeneous environments, which the meaning of that, the dictionary meaning, consisting of all of parts, all of the same kind, which can go from ethnicity, race, regions, religion, workplace, sports, politics, can create a shared bubble of beliefs, habits, language, assumptions, and acceptable questions. The bubble may be based on religion, politics, class, race, neighborhood, family, profession, online culture, or social identity. Inside the bubble, belonging may depend on agreement. People learn which questions are allowed. They learn which truths must be whispered. They learn which contradictions everyone has agreed to not notice. They learn that harmony sometimes means pretending, and blissful ignorance becomes the parsley on top of the rice. Word to Instagram chefs. A curious, hyper aware person may struggle in this environment because their mind naturally examines the script. Why does everyone repeat the same explanation? Why is that behavior acceptable when one person does it, but unforgivable when another person does it? Why does the group condemn publicly when many members secretly practice? Whew. Why does every outsider become an enemy? Why does questioning the leader automatically mean questioning God, the culture, the family, the race, the party, the business, or the entire history of civilization? The pattern recognizer see the strings. The group sees disloyalty. The pattern recognizer asks for evidence. The group asks, why are they being so difficult? The pattern recognizer notices that the business professional always lies about their whereabouts after missing a deadline. The group responds, you do not know what he's going through. That may be true, but he is also running a business. Compassion and standards can occupy the same room. Understanding someone's hardship does not require pretending they fulfilled an obligation that they did not fulfill. You can care about what a person is going through and still require clarity, professionalism, and accountability. The world does not become cruel simply because a deadline is real. Small talk archetypes and social fatigue. Hyper aware people may also struggle with repetitive social rituals. Small talk can feel exhausting when you recognize that you and the same person have had the same conversation 17 times. How are you? Fine. How is work? Busy. How about that weather? Still outside. The small talker may not consciously realize the conversation repeats because repetition provides familiarity and safety. And also, too, when you address small talk, since it is a part of that person, for whatever reason, something inside of them feels attacked, so they get to overly defending small talk, even though in future sessions of said small talk, the conversation never deepens. Even if you attempt to deepen it, it never deepens. It's lather, rinse, and repeat all over again. And when they do not enthusiastically participate, homogeneous thinkers may interpret it as rejection. You're mean, you're stuck up, you're difficult, you think you're better than everybody. No, sometimes you simply do not want to discuss the temperature like the two of you are competing to become local meteorologists. When you spend enough time around the same type of social environments, you begin recognizing personality archetypes. You notice similar excuses, similar lies, defenses, projections, methods of hiding shame. You may be able to predict how one personality will type will react to another. You know the person who performs confidence but collapses when corrected. Too many examples on social media of this. You know the person who agrees with whoever spoke last. You know the person who turns every gathering into a live auditioning. You know the person who enters every disagreement with no evidence but enough volume to power a small city and insults. Patterns become visible, and eventually the environment may become boring because your curiosity has outgrown it. That does not mean you're a superior. It means your mind needs greater complexity, diversity, honesty, or depth. Social media, every tribe in one building. Social media created something historically in history, unusual. It placed countless tribes, subcultures, belief systems, identities, classes, age groups, ideologies, and emotional states on the same digital platform. It's not meant, this is not good for us at all. Humans were not built. A lot of people can't even comprehend what's going on. Then they gave everyone a comment box. Of course, the comments look like a battlefield. People often assume these conflicts are only about race, religion, politics, gender, or nationality, but group alignment is much more complicated. Two people may share a race, but fight over religion. They may share a religion, but fight over politics. They may share politics, but fight over class. They may share a class, but have completely different cultural experiences. They may agree on 99 subjects and declare war over the 100th. The alliances shift depending on which identity is being activated. Social media platforms understand that conflict produces attention. Attention produces engagement. Engagement produces data. Data produces profit. So the system has little incentive to turn every digital battlefield into a meditation garden. Social media adds materialism to the syllabus. It adds tribal protection, performance, comparison. It offers endless opportunities to seek validation from strangers who may disappear the moment the algorithm changes. People who already feel lonely, insecure, seen, or uncertain may become especially vulnerable. They may be trained to distrust themselves. They may shrink to fit a chosen tribe. They may repeat ideas they have never examined. They may chase the spotlight without realizing the crowd should have been chasing them. Word to me. You live and you learn, then you get loves. They may confuse visibility with value. They may confuse attention with community. They may confuse agreement with truth. And they may become terrified of having a thought that their online group has not pre-approved. Secret rebellion and public judgment. One of the most revealing. Let me drink some water because when my mouth get dry, I get to sounding like. One of the most revealing patterns inside rigid groups is the difference between private behavior and public performance. Some people secretly do the same things they publicly condemn, and I've seen all of y'all over the years, baby. The hoes and bros be faking it and taking it. The issue is not always the behavior itself. The issue is whether the group can see it. As long as their own choices remain hidden, they may preserve their status by judging someone who lives openly. This is how people protect their position inside of a tribe. They sacrifice another person to maintain the illusion of purity. The pattern recognizer notices the hypocrisy, but pointing it out may threaten the entire social arrangement. The group does not simply hear this person is behaving inconsistently. They hear the rules holding our community together may not be honest. That is a much larger threat. So they attack the observer, not because the observer is necessarily wrong, but because the observation is socially expensive. Truth can be costly in environments built on performance. It can even be an environment you created. If you are Magneto and Charles Xavier and you bring in a group of tribal thinkers together because you didn't know what tribal thinking was in your 20s, and then you end up realizing once the group became a dynamic, it started being built on betrayal, gossip, and all kinds of other negative stuff. When you call that out, baby, all of a sudden you become embodied with all of the things that they're doing that you were trying to address and smooth over. It's real life. Like once you really get into human behavior, unless a person has complexity to themselves, people start really feeling like a menu at a restaurant that you go to every day. Like it's so readable. The drain of being vindicated. There is a particular exhaustion that comes from noticing, warning, being dismissed, and later being proven correct. I have a Grammy for that, a Grammy, a Nobel Peace Prize, any award of prestige, I have it. You notice the scheme. They called you negative. You notice the manipulation. They called you paranoid. You notice the person was repeatedly skipping boundaries. They said you were judging too quickly. Then the consequences arrived. The account was empty. The contract collapsed. The lie was exposed. The victim spoke. The warning became headlines. That is why I deleted my Twitter. I had a Twitter since 2008. When I tell you my tweets started going viral randomly every time something would be exposed, and I beat and tweeted about it 2-3 years before, or a year before, or 6 months before. That's why Twitter had to go, because I didn't realize I was being an oracle for free. No. If people want to be blind, then I'll put on some sunglasses and be blind right along with you. I am not no God in light. We all need to be our own God in light. Codependency is what is destroying society and what has always destroyed society. That is how people with more power kept control of people with less power, because the people never found their own 2 feet. They always depended on an outside source for something. And when people depend on you, you can control them. And still, nobody returned to say, you were right, we should have listened. They simply moved on to the next avoidable disaster. That cycle can make a pattern recognizer bitter. It can make them feel alienated. It can make them believe society punishes awareness and rewards denial. But constant vindication can also create another danger. A person may begin believing they're always right. Thanks to childhood trauma, I never feel like I'm always right at all. I don't think like that. I always question myself because I've always been questioned. And that's a flaw and a wound that I'll let ride because it's beneficial. I never want to be so egotistical to where I have no doubt in the information I have. That's why for me, I'm always having 2-3 sources for anything I speak on. And in real life, whenever I'm doing business, I keep a whole digital trail of everything. So in the event I do have to make an accusation or address something, the evidence is right there. It's never no and even in person, I've always been a person to where I respect you calling me out, but I need examples, because if I call you out, I'm gonna give you examples, like dated time and all of that, because my brain is just that accurate. I don't intentionally keep note of stuff. I just remember it when I need to think about it. So yeah, a person. That is why humility remains necessary. Sometimes your warning will be correct. Sometimes it will be incomplete. Sometimes the pattern will be real, but the conclusion will be wrong. The gift becomes stronger when it is disciplined. Observe carefully, speak responsibly, distinguish suspicion from evidence. Know when to warn, document, leave, and know when silence is wiser than arguing with someone committed to misunderstanding you. Baby, ain't no warning at all. No. Because number one, for me, I freaked myself out for a while because my warnings would be step by step of what actually ended up happening. Granted, I never first saw that would be what happened. I was just giving examples, and then my example would be A through Z. So now I'm cool. They have a lot of people online doing all kinds of things where they giving advice. Go to them. Divines. Sometimes life pushes you away from environments that can no longer support your growth. Think about aggressive vines. Vines are messy. They begin in one yard, wrap around the gate, pull it toward the ground, cross into another property, attach themselves to a second fence, and eventually arrive at your gate like they pay property taxes, which if they did, I would welcome them. I actually would. I always said that. I remember when I lived in the apartment complex that had roaches, and I, of course, used my roach skills to get rid of them. It took 3 months, but they were gone. And I always say that roaches paid bills. These little MFs could stay, but they don't. So no, you got to go. That is how unhealthy group behavior can spread. One person refuses accountability. The family protects them. The community normalizes it. The workplace accommodates it. The online echo chamber gives it a motivational quote. And eventually the pattern reaches everyone's gate. People living in survival mode may never feel safe enough to explore the creative parts of their mind. The group thinks for them. The group tells them what is dangerous, who is respectable, what questions are forbidden. Question the ideology feels like questioning their own safety. So they protect the systems that limits them. And that the reason I found that answer is because I was so curious about Why do people be cult followers for certain entities in politics and certain other things that you see online? And that same thing has proven to turn on them generation after generation, just based off of you following the person just for that one aspect. They're not looking at the content of the person character, of the actions that the person actually did. It's like, and the person who doing it, they know all of the key words from the tribe to activate people to become cult following. And it's amazing because these same people have the longest comments, the loudest voices, the hottest anger, but you don't even realize somebody's using you. And it's like the people who are trying to inform them, no matter what you say, they will always be offended, because little do they realize they're so attached to their beliefs that any critique of the beliefs is felt like an attack on themselves. So it's literally no way to get through to those people. That's why the internet and combining all of these environments together is not cool, because a lot of these people would have never had exchanges with each other in real life, because some homogeneous people literally are so boxed in that they don't leave or go to environments that don't include their people there, whatever that may be. A hyper aware person may never fit comfortably inside the arrangement. Their brain keeps asking questions. Their curiosity keeps finding cracks. Their observations keep interrupting the performance. For a long time, they may interpret this lack of fit as rejection, but sometimes you are not rejected. Sometimes you dodged an atomic bomb wearing matching family reunion shirts. The difference between a gift and a prison. Pattern recognition can protect you. It can help you notice financial traps, dangerous behavior, manipulative marketing, inconsistent professionals, unhealthy relationships, environmental risk, and social pressure. It can also help you recognize beauty. You can notice what conditions help you thrive. You can identify which friendships feel reciprocal. You can recognize which routines improve your mental health. You can see which spending habits create financial stress. You can identify the environments where your creativity expands. Pattern recognition should not only be used to detect danger, that keeps the gift trapped in survival mode. Use it to detect opportunity, to recognize peace, to identify trustworthy people, to build systems, to study your own habits, to notice what repeatedly works. A person who only scans for danger may survive the forest but never notice the path leading out. A lot of people who do really well in real estate, they use pattern recognition. They keep up with the different laws. They keep up with the different bills and things changing in the area. Like in certain cities in this country where the medium home value is $30,000, but over the next 5 years, there's developmental plans that's going to boost the area up. So if someone was to get one of those $30,000 houses now and get it into at least mint condition, that house will probably be worth $100,000 to $200,000 within the next 5 years. And then if the person is financially savvy, they would either take the capital gains taxes or get their money into some type of community fund where capital gains taxes are either delayed or completely waived. All of that is information that's available now, especially because of the internet. And I just wish more people, not just my videos, because my videos are basic about financial literacy at the current moment, but just read as much as you can about financial literacy. There's so many free books at the library that you can rent and keep up with. Don't destroy them people books, because if the library books start looking bad, I'm gonna think that my people did it, because I've been advocating for the library the last few months. But yeah, it's a lot of information out there. From rumination to action, the final step is action. Awareness without action becomes a mental treadmill. You think, analyze, replay, predict. You create 12 possible explanations, 4 imaginary debates, and a closing argument for a court case that does not exist. But nothing changes. The goal of pattern recognition is not to think forever. The goal is to make a better decision. When you notice a pattern, ask, what are the observable facts? What part is interpretation? Has this happened repeatedly? Have I communicated clearly? Has the person shown genuine repair? Has behavior changed, or have the words simply improved? What boundary is available to me? What action would protect my peace, finances, health, time, or future? Then act. Document what needs documentation. Ask the necessary questions. Set the boundary. change the routine, leave the environment, reduce access, stop lending money. You're not a bank. Stop accepting the same excuses with a different font. Stop returning to the restaurant expecting the fries to become hot through the power of forgiveness. Pattern recognition is not meant to trap you in observation. It is meant to guide movement. Not to mention, pattern recognition is the skill of people who invent things. Because rather than you sit up here and get caught in these same societal patterns that people are unconsciously repeating, they think technology, location, and other things make them different than the people of the past. But history shows it repeats very, very hard. And with pattern recognition, people, they are able to break away from the patterns and create a new pattern, which leads to inventions, which leads to innovations, which leads to different issues that maybe their part of society have been facing for generations. They find a solution to it. Because once you start thinking outside of the box, you have solutions that are outside of the box. The whole reason that a lot of people suffer is because the box they in don't have all of the tools they need. But when you're not living in the box, you can find tools, you can build tools, you can take a tool that was for something else and make it for something else. So the sky is yours. The growth of the hyper-aware mind. The hyper-aware person may eventually have to graduate from the mindset of the environment that raised them. That can be confusing. It may contradict what beloved people taught them. It may require questioning traditions that once created belonging. It may require recognizing that some of the people who love them also pass down fear, denial, prejudice, silence, or emotional avoidance. Both things can be true. Someone can love you and still teach you something harmful. Someone can have good intentions and limited awareness. Someone can protect you in one season and restrict you in another. Growth does not require hating where you came from. It requires becoming honest about what you can no longer carry. The brain that could never fully sit inside a rigid group may have been preparing you for a wider world. Your curiosity was not always rebellion. Your questions were not always disrespect. Your discomfort was not always dysfunction. Sometimes your mind was simply refusing to become smaller. And keep in mind, baby, the group is not going to like you. When it comes to homogeneous groups, you see it on the internet. Anything that's outside of their group, political, race, religion, baby, it's always hate this, evil that, whatever. You can't please them people, so stop trying. Closing. So are you overthinking? Possibly. We all do sometimes, but you may also be observing something real. The task is not to automatically believe every fear. The task is not to automatically dismiss every pattern. The task is to develop discernment, observe without immediately convicting, verify without gaslighting yourself, because enough people done already did it. Word the propane tanks on the gas grill. Remain curious without becoming consumed. Protect yourself without turning every person into an enemy, unless they want to be one. Recognize patterns without believing you can read minds. And most importantly, let awareness lead to action. You're not required to spend your life proving a pattern of people who benefit pretending it does not exist. You're not required to keep revisiting the same relationship, organization, family system, business, or restaurant, hoping that your absence inspired a full renovation. You are allowed to evaluate people as they are. You are allowed to trust repeated behavior. You are allowed to stop investing in potential. You are allowed to leave environments where truth is treated like betrayal. And you're allowed to see your awareness as more than the scar tissue of your past. It may have started as survival, but with discipline, humility, emotional regulation, and action, it can become strategy. It can become wisdom, protection, freedom, because the goal is not to spend your entire life noticing the vines. The goal is to recognize when they reach your gate, cut them back, protect your property, and continue growing somewhere the sunlight can actually reach you. And keep in mind, when it comes to people living in echo chambers, whatever narrative is of the echo chamber, that's what they live life by. So if they feel like they are disenfranchised, they miserable, everything is worse, no amount of resources, support, love, self-sacrifice is going to make that person happier. So when you notice, as much as you do for them, you still hit them, run to the world and tell the world, nobody here to help me, or this, and this. That's a part of their scripting. You can't beat the script, baby. So that's why it's better to just love yourself first, because it's going to be harder to self-abandon when it comes to other people. But that is it for this video. Thank you for watching. Happy El Nino.